Hello, my name's Andrew Towner. I'm Managing Director of Employee Benefits at Cartlidge, Morland. It's important that everyone reviews their pension savings regularly, and we're delighted to be able to offer the choice of ESG-focused portfolios to our clients and to the employees of our workplace pension schemes wherever possible. We know that this will certainly meet a growing demand, but I wanted to share a little more about Cartlidge Morland's thoughts and processes in this increasingly important area. So I'm delighted to introduce our own ESG investment manager, Mark Stevens. Hi, Mark.
Hi, Andrew.
Thanks for joining me. So I'll just start with an easy one. What is ESG?
If one would have to mention an acronym that's been very popular in the investment world, then it certainly is ESG. In simple terms, ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance, and it's a set of standards used to determine how socially responsible a company's operations and standard procedures are.
Okay, so who would you think that ESG investing is for?
This is an interesting question because this come up several times, and although ESG, ethical and impact investing has been associated with younger investors, Andrew, you would be surprised that we have been engaging on the private client side of things. We've been engaging in a lot of conversation with our more matured clients on ESG. So it's in effect it's for all investors, really.
Oh, well, that's interesting to hear. So I guess in simple terms, can you give an example of how investors will view ESG within organisations?
From an environmental point of view, I'd like to start from environmental and governance. From an environmental point of view, one would like to identify actions organizations are taking to reduce their carbon footprint, approach to recycling, etc., as helping the environment.
Yeah.
Equally, when you think of the social aspect, a socially conscious investor would look at how an organization manages employees and the contribution they make to the society in general. The social criteria may simply include an organization's relationship with the communities that they operate in. And then, finally, when you talk about governance, the governance criteria, one would like to look at things like diversity within an organization's leadership, rights of shareholders, and the culture within an organization. So to sort of sum it up, it's how an organization helps the environment, the social impacts they have on the community, and governance, that the governance criteria they kind of undertake within an organization.
So it's quite a big area then. So obviously we've been running SRI, socially responsible investment portfolios, for some time now. So how does it differ to that?
I think to sort of simplify this, SRI portfolios are quite narrowly focused on in terms of the fund choice. It's quite limited, and it looks at one part of more so the social part more than the others. But the new ESG portfolios we have put together extends this same principle to cover a broader spectrum and additional emphasis and places an additional emphasis on governance, on good governance, social impact, and more importantly, you'd have thematic investments within ESG, where a fund may typically look at sort of clean water or carbon emission, climate change. So it's an extension of ESG. Is merely an extension of.
That's really, thank you for that. So just getting to the nitty gritty, what sort of criteria do you use when you're selecting funds for the ESG portfolios?
Yes, I think it's important to sort of highlight that ESG funds are quite limited. The fund choice for ESG funds are quite limited when compared to core funds. When I say core funds, non-ESG funds. However, we've seen a number of ESG funds, grow over the past few years, and more importantly, most asset managers are incorporating ESG and within their stock selection process. We've also seen a surge in new funds that's been launched, so that's quite good for diversification purpose in terms of building portfolios or constructing portfolios. just to come back to your question, I mean, we do follow a very, very strict and rigorous process in researching and selecting the funds that we eventually put on our buy list. And, we start off with a quantitative research, which looks at the fund's long-term performance, data over, discrete and over different discrete and cumulative periods, alongside the risk metrics, which looks at things like volatility, information ratio, and all the other sort of risk metrics that over that same period that most investors would say look at over that same period. I mean, the second part, which is mostly the most important, which adds a little bit of human touch to it, is the qualitative part of the process, where the investment team at Cartlidge Morland, we tend to meet the team behind the fund, being the fund manager, and understand how the fund is managed, and the research team that supports the fund manager, and and the resources the fund manager has access to within the firm. But I think to sort of narrow it down to ESG, it's very important for us to understand sort of the ESG criteria the fund managers use in selecting these companies that sit within the funds, and it could to put it in simple term, meaning the type of businesses they would exclude and the ones they would include within their portfolio, and why they would invest in company A over B. Just to make you aware as well, I mean, we do have our own internal ESG criteria checklist that we use to make sure every single fund we invest in fits within the set criteria we've set for ourselves. And as part of our ongoing commitment to following these or monitoring these funds, we sort of monitor them on a regular basis and make sure they're doing exactly what they say. The tin as we describe it. I mean, and that could be making sure performance remains consistent and with reasonable volatility as well.
So I mean, would you consider that these funds perhaps are more volatile than non-ESG funds?
It's one of the questions we do have quite a lot from clients. I mean, one would expect some level of volatility from every single fund they invest in, be it ESG or not. I mean, I think the main difference with ESG funds is, they are sort of classed as, investing in companies that sit within the sort of small and mid cap, market size, which, and naturally, obviously carry a slightly higher level of volatility than, other sort of large cap companies, large growth companies. But this is not to say that ESG funds invest in only small and mid cap companies, as some of the funds we do invest in do feature sort of some of the well-known large growth companies within their top 10 holdings. I mean, generally we tend to invest in funds that focus more on risk management and not chase the winners, and have diversification as central to their investment process. So and on top of this, we also the diversification we do have within our own portfolios we manage tend to help to reduce risk as well. So throughout the process, what we're focusing on is making sure we have an element of risk management within some of these funds we invest in, and a high level of diversification, and on top of that we add our layer of diversification through portfolio construction.
All right. So I mean, obviously, where people invest their money is really important to them. For some people more so than portfolio performance, but obviously performance is key. People want to grow their monies. So I mean, how generally, how do ESG funds compare to their non-ESG counterparts?
Right, it's an interesting one, because more recently ESG funds have delivered some good, some stellar returns, and that's been supported mainly by one, their popularity and the amount of money they've managed to attract over the past few years. But of course, fundamentals have also supported performance lately. I mean, from my point of view, I expect performance of these funds to continue to be stronger going forward as they become very popular and as more investors or more asset managers incorporate ESG to their processes. So it's performance has held up very well, and the current environment has also supported performance as well.
Well, that's good to hear. So, I mean, topically speaking now, I suppose, has the pandemic had any impact on ESG investing?
I mean, the pandemic came with its own challenges in different shapes and forms. As we could all, we could all attest to. However, I think from an ESG perspective, we've all traveled less than we would have normally be, either be through by air or car, and in effect reducing our carbon footprint and CO2 emissions. Personally, I have probably walked or run more miles than my car's probably clocked over the past year or so. And to sort of drill it down to companies, I mean, we have seen most organizations making great efforts to make sure they comply and incorporate ESG within their day-to-day operations. Sort of answer your question, really, the pandemic has somehow positively impacted ESG investing, as most investors and asset managers are incorporating ESG in their investment process.
Yeah.
So well, yeah, they have been positive.
Yeah. So I'm taking from that, in your opinion, you think ESG investing is here to stay then?
Yes, I think it's certainly here to stay, and to an extent, it would somehow become the conventional way of investing in, say 10 years time. But interestingly, I read this morning that most occupational schemes should have an element of ESG exposure by 2025. So it could come way early than 10 years, as most corporate schemes are effectively having to have an element of ESG in there. So hopefully, and I'm sure hopefully we'll all be here to champion ESG investing going forward.
Yeah, indeed. No, well, that's great. Thanks so much for that, Mark. It's been really interesting. I guess the issue that some clients will encounter is that the pension fund choices that are offered by their existing workplace schemes, are too limited to accommodate these ESG portfolios. And for some clients, of course, we've got our long-standing and popular SRI portfolios that are still available to their members. Unfortunately, some providers will offer very few SRI or ESG options, and so it's impossible for you and the rest of our team to construct a meaningful portfolio. And I guess where that is the case, it's equally important for employers and clients to look at their existing pension scheme, and to make sure that it's still relevant and attractive as a workplace scheme for their employees. And of course, at Cartlidge Morland, we'll always be happy to help with such a review of that. So just again, thanks ever so much for your time, Mark. It's been
thanks
really
for your time, Andrew.
I've certainly learned a lot, and to those of you that are watching, thank you very much for watching us today.
Thanks.